Hi, everybody. We're back, and today we have two friends. We've got Dr. Chippy back and our friend Jordan, who is the fundamentals of all nutrition. Everybody wants a Jordan in their life. And I want to talk today about this really cool program that Chippy, I think, Chip, you started it, right, Chippy? I think you started it?
Myself and Dr. Volker, yeah.
Oh, that's right. Chris Volker. Yeah, we got to have him on.
Yeah.
He's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think I want to talk about that today. I want to talk about the Renew program. I want to give Jordan a lot of time to talk about why she got into, the dietitian and nutrition and all that stuff, because it is really the fundamentals of, I think, health, wellness, and lifestyle is you are what you eat. I'm a firm believer of that. So without further ado, Miss Chippy, Dr. Chippy, why did you start that Renew program?
It's personal.
Well, do you not want to share personal stories with us?
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I mean, this is a safe space, but also it's not private. It's a podcast.
As you know, life was like crumbling at the seams for me, and I stitched it back together. And I was walking to the ICU. I was going up the hallway, and I was walking into the ICU, and I saw Dr. Volker. And I was just telling him about, this craziness of my life. And I said, Kirk, like, something's got to come out of this, right? And I said, I want to create a program where we teach people how to heal. And I said, for all the craziness in my life, and I'm on the other side of it, I have to give back. There has to be a reason why my life went to shit. And
I want to interrupt you. Your life didn't go to shit. I mean, there was a part of your life that took a wrong turn.
Well, listen, I'm going to speak for you. At the time, it felt like it was just spiraling down, right? It was spiraling down. So on the other side of it, and I ran into Kirk, and I said, let's create a program, and he said, well, and he's this crazy genius. And of course I could I could see his wheels turning in his head. And we literally went to the physician, doctor's lounge. I took out just a random sheet of paper. Oh, I know. I took out a napkin, I think. And I just started
like an entrepreneur.
Oh, yeah.
Ideas on napkins.
Wow. And I think I said, okay, we have to talk about nutrition. We have to talk about, importance of exercise, and let's create a community, and let's teach people how to manage their stress. And I said, let's create these modules, and we put it literally, I told him this, and he executed it within a matter of months. I want to say,
what I love about him? Kirk is such a unique individual. We call these people unicorns in the industry, because Kirk is just as much as a creative entrepreneur as he is a medical doctor.
Oh my God.
Which is very rare.
Right. He's brilliant. He's kind. He is magnetic.
So charismatic.
Oh my gosh. Just a genius. And then he just ran with it. We had funding. We had people running the program. Modules were being written. And literally and I just literally watched this thing happen. And I kind of stepped back because, I had this crazy office schedule and work schedule. So, but now, Jordan, it is running, right? It's running.
It's the real deal.
Well, what is it? I mean, you had this, your life was in crisis and you wanted to give back, but ultimately, what was the objective? I mean, what was the mission behind Renew?
I wanted to empower people to heal. Just as it is my mission now. I want to continue to empower people to heal, because we are not doing that in healthcare, as every individual that is in this space understands so wholeheartedly.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. I think we should also get into the acronym of Renew.
Okay. I don't want to first you say it. Jordan.
Okay.
Jordan. Tell us about Renew.
I will tell you. So Renew is an acronym. It stands for Restore and Empower Through Nutrition, Exercise, and Wellness.
I love it.
Yeah. So that word you used earlier, empower, Dr. Chippy, like that is very true then, very true now.
Yeah.
Wait a
And
minute.
I think at this point, yeah.
Well,
How are you guys spelling renew? Because I'm not a good speller.
RENEW.
go ahead.
Got it.
RENEW.
I'm not good with the spell. I get it
Yeah.
now.
RENEW.
The acronym works.
It works. It's just the and doesn't
Spell
count.
check.
It works.
But now I think we've served almost 500 people,
That's
maybe more.
Wow.
In the
How
past,
long?
8 years?
Well, and
Oh,
we
that's
started.
amazing.
We first started just offering it to the employees at the hospital, but now it's released. Like
Yeah,
the
into
general
the community.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's awesome. So Jordan, what does the average day at Renew look like for you? Being on the other side of that, helping these people, being able to heal their lives and their bodies. What does that look like? And who is your demographic?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I basically have the coolest job ever because
nice.
because I get to like Dr. Chippy said, I feel the same way. Like I think I was put on this earth to be of service and give back, specifically in a healthcare approach. So that's why I became a dietitian. Love talking about food, and I get to do that with people every single day. And we work with anyone. I think our minimum age is 21 years old up until 80-ish. I mean, that's kind of a flexible cutoff.
Like some tech savvy, right? I mean,
some tech savviness, because we're mostly a virtual program at this point. Yeah, we started completely in person, and now it's more of a hybrid with Zoom meetings. But yeah, we do every day. I have coaching sessions. So we do small group, maximum of 3 people in a group. They're 30-minute sessions once a week. And there's that continuity over the 6 weeks where I get to listen to people's goals, what's really important to them, what's getting in the way, and what's going really well. And we can, I think, just as important as helping people troubleshoot what's getting in the way of their goals is helping people celebrate where they're doing really well, because us as humans, we are so hard on ourselves. So,
and
I talk about
function, right? Our brains function when it's a reward system versus, one that's more, negative. I mean, you can have like quick, powerful changes based on fear, but fear is never lasting. But if you continually reward our brains, and this is, and again, Asunta, we were talking about doing tiny habits. At some point, we have to. But the whole premise.
Well, I think we do it every day. With every time we talk to somebody, we're incorporating these tiny habits because that's what it takes.
Right, and one of them is to reward our brains for a task done, whether it's perfection or not. A task is done. You reward it. Yeah. Right.
Well, and I think that, you brought up fear isn't the way to get us to do anything. And Chippy and I have older children. It's not lasting. And, I learned that now. I learned that through raising children. Like I don't know anybody who responds positively to fear mongering. It typically works in the opposite direction. And so that's what I learned, through parenting. But also I think it is critical that, not only are you rewarding people through positive reinforcement, but also just the feelings that you're getting when you start making positive changes in your life, despite how big or how small they are.
So you must have some pretty cool, happy stories, right? With going through almost 500 some patients.
You've got to have some.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Are you able to share any of them with us, Jordan?
I can actually. I jotted down a couple, some of my favorites, but I think by far my favorite, this was from maybe 4 years ago. I was working with a woman, probably, I think she was mid-50s. And whenever at the beginning of the program, we always ask people, what is your why, right? Why are you here? Why are you committing to these weeks of working together? Because let's be honest, 99% of people, they want weight loss. but that's not really a solid motivation for most people.
Poor metric, right? It's just a bad metric.
Poor metric for, yes, it's a poor metric for health. It's not representative, but also it's just not very motivating.
Because, and also, like, we know plenty of people. I know Chippy, you deal with people all the time that we call them skinny fat. Because even though their body weight is not a lot, but their cholesterol is through the roof.
They're metabolically unhealthy. Yeah, about 20%, right? I think, Jordan, correct me if I'm wrong. I want to say it's about 20% of skinny people are metabolically unhealthy. And that's
I don't know the stat, but I would believe it. And I do know for a fact that number goes up with age. So
of course,
right. Back to your story. Like, we're just going to be interrupting you. So back to your story.
No, it's good. It's good. I like it. But yeah, so this woman comes and, like most other people, she really wants to lose weight. So we dig into why. And she says the most amazing thing. She wanted to ride roller coasters with her kids at Fish Garden. And with her body, she wasn't comfortable. She wasn't able to get on all the rides. So that was her big motivation. Right? I will never, ever forget this.
Yeah.
So that's, whenever somebody feels like they're getting off track or lacking motivation, which is very, very human, like motivation is not the reason we do what we do, right? It's fleeting.
Okay, so back to tiny habits. So he actually makes that point. He says motivation is great, again, but that's not enough.
It's not enough. It's not enough. Because we could say all day, like, tomorrow I'm going to do this. And then it's like, oh,
it's not enough. It's not enough. But no, that's really cool.
Yeah. And everybody thinks that the reason they're not where they want to be is because they lack motivation, right? Like something is missing, something is wrong. Yeah, that's not the problem. But getting in touch with this why, what really matters to you, that's something that can get us up off the seat when we said we were going to go work out and we don't feel like it. Right? We said we were going to make dinner and we don't feel like it. Tuning back into that. So, And
so what happened to her at the end?
So she had amazing results. I can't remember, the numbers, but what I do remember, something that stands out, is I actually followed up with her a year later, and she told me that she went to Busch Gardens and she rode all the rides.
Oh, that's so nice. Because she wasn't able to do this with her kids.
Yeah.
Good job, Jordan.
Just talking about motivation, I think the other thing is our entire environment is geared against us, right? Because if you look at how many chemicals, right, in our water, our food, and the air, there's like 80,000 chemicals that we are exposed to. And what that does to the brain and our bodies and the fatigue. For people that can't get motivated, it's okay.
It's to be expected. It's like, I was thinking about that today.
So hard.
All of us get up so early, right? Like we all are busy all day long, and it's 5:00 this morning. I'm getting ready, and by the time I finished my morning supplements, my morning routine, doing whatever it was I had to do, I thought to myself,
we're exhausted.
Well, not only was I exhausted, but I'm full from all the supplements I have to take. But in addition to that, I'm thinking, for those homes that are not clean.
Oh yeah,
right. I'm gonna do this. I haven't done it yet, but I am gonna do this. I want to see how many steps I have to go through. How many things am I touching from the time I wake up and ingesting, whether it be anything from a vitamin to a mouthwash to a toothpaste, and add up those steps to the average household that doesn't have a clean green house, because every one of those things are disrupting our systems, right? And so by the time I'm finished with my morning routine, how could I be motivated to even leave? I'm like, I don't want to do the exercise anymore. I'm so tired. And so and I have everything that I'm touching, I make sure is, not harming me. I'm doing the best that I possibly can, assuming that I believe everything that's on the labels.
Right, exactly.
I can't do any more than that unless I start formulating my own things. But, you're dealing with people who, I think the biggest part is that they're making the change. They're reaching out to you to say, help me. And for someone to ask for help like that, especially for their weight, like that's a lot. Like so many people feel so incredibly defeated.
Well, I think part of the success of Renew is this community, right? So people have shared experiences. And when you take someone who's going through this and they're the ones going through this life and they think, well, everyone else seems to have it figured out. And then they come into it, right? And other
all
people
lies.
are voicing the same thing. And you're just like, wow, you have this sense of, okay, I'm not alone. Someone else is going through this, or they're going through worse stuff, right? I think that human shared experience, I think, is another powerful way. Because the other thing that Renew does is that there's community programs, right? There's grocery store, there's walking sessions, right? I think at least that's when I remember this stuff.
Yeah, we do weekly group lessons. So actually this week we did our virtual grocery store tour. Now we do it virtually. And it is my favorite. It's so much fun. There's always tons of questions.
I bet.
And you really, you have to be a detective a little bit you can't just trust the marketing on packages. And even if someone is really, really intelligent, really well-versed in health and nutrition, I mean, we've had doctors, we've had nurse practitioners go through this program, and they get so much out of it. And what's really cool too is that physicians that have been through the program are actually becoming our biggest referral source.
Right.
So they're actually sending their patients over because they know, what's going on.
In the past, right, we've had programs that promise weight loss and all of these things, but it matters. It means buying our food, buying our supplement, basically pay to play
it becomes
things.
A business, right?
It's a business,
right?
And although this
service.
What does this program cost? I mean, I guess, did we talk about that and I missed it? But what does this cost for the average individual?
So the cost right now is $600 for the 6-week program.
Wow.
And that includes, so weekly coaching sessions, weekly group lessons. You get daily meal feedback from the dietitian on your meals. And then we have an amazing online resource library. So one of the things I get to do, which I said it's the best job ever, because you get to pop in and help people on Zoom, and then you get to hop off of Zoom and make content for what people need. So for example, someone just asked me today, can we make a resource for like hurricane food, non-perishable healthy foods for next season? Hopefully we don't get any more storms
brilliant.
ever. But yeah, just real things that people are looking for.
Because the average family for go-to, I mean, listen, let's call it what it is. They're going to SpaghettiOs, potato chips, and I don't even know. I don't know because
Shelf
my hurricane
stable,
prep.
right? Anything that's shelf stable, but
and this year, we had a lot of storms, 3 in a row for all of us. And this year, my hurricane prep food was what I did. I mean, I went to the grocery store 3 days before and made sure that I made all of my healthy staples and put them in the freezer so that when we needed food, even if we had lost power, I could just put it out to thaw and it was still edible. And it still kept to all my standards. And I know I got to feed Dr. Chippy one night because you were without power for quite a while.
Yeah. No, it was
and
good.
Listen, I mean, so both you, Jordan and Chippy, are full vegan households.
Well, I guess I'm primarily whole food plant-based, right? I think that's a much better way of saying
No,
it.
you're right, because vegan stuff can be very substituted.
Yeah, I mean, vegan is Oreos, it's
right.
Diet Coke, and I think we have to move, so whole food plant-based, I'm majority whole food plant-based with the understanding that this is not a religion for me. This is not about right or wrong. It's, if there's a birthday party, I celebrated a birthday party with a friend. We went out and, there was non-vegan stuff, but, it was, we're celebrating. This wasn't like, oh, it's wrong for me to have dairy.
Right.
Or wrong for me to have something that's not plant-based. But yeah, so I say whole food plant-based majority of the time. Because again, if we talk about all these different diets, and Jordan, I think you're going to share the same sentiment, is that there's so many labels, but at the end of the day, the biggest culprit is processed food.
Yes.
And there are people that are in the plant only camp, and there's people that are in the ketogenic camp, but both of those diametrically opposing diets have one thing in common, and that's where the benefit comes from. And that one thing is that processed food is eliminated. When
That's
you
right.
take away processed food, you've now shifted 80% of what is wrong with our dietary system.
That's right.
So
yeah.
I love that.
But now we have
whole food, plant-based. I love that better than saying vegan.
Right. And mostly whole food, plant-based. Yeah.
I like that. Thank you. I love that.
Yeah. It is a good distinction. It's important.
Because there is a lot of substitutes.
I feel like people get that what that word means most of the time, but in, a conversation with, I think whole food plant-based is just really, really realistic, and a much more approachable word. I think sometimes these labels have like sentiments and connotations around them.
Right.
Too.
Sometimes negative and that again is sort of this cultish sense. You take away the science of it, right? But if you just go back to the science, what whole food plant-based, at least for me, is you have a massive amount of fiber. You are getting a massive amount of phytonutrients. These are the stuff in fruits and veggies and greens and grains and whole grains and legumes that really help to improve metabolic health. And, I can just put in a statistic that, I'm sure a lot of people know, but I think the number is 93% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy.
Right. So I have a question, and I know that between the two of you, both of you can answer this. So right now there's so much controversy about, right? It's so divided in what is healthy and what's not healthy. You have your full-on carnivores that believe that if you introduce any type of fruits or carbohydrates to your diet, that you will not be insulin resistant. Then you have people who live primarily on whole food, plant-based diets that don't introduce any type of animal protein or anything that comes from an animal, right? Including dairy and all of that stuff, and believe that is the way to become insulin resistant. So how do you know, how does an average person like me, trying to stay healthy, I'm not looking to be any label or any trend,
right?
Imagine if I said to you, like, okay, I'm not trying to lose or gain weight. I'm just trying to sustain a healthy lifestyle. Which direction do I go?
Well, so both camps have science behind their claims. But if you pull back, truly going back to what I said, get rid of processed foods.
Right.
And again, so that shifts a massive portion towards a more metabolically healthy. Now, I do whole food plant-based because I feel the signal is towards adding a massive amount of fiber. Because I have seen now through another program we can, sort of touch upon, which is Ornish, I have seen people with blockages in the blood vessels of their heart get smaller, reverse heart disease based on but there's more things. There's not just whole food plant-based, but there's community building. There's teaching people how to manage stress and exercise. Those are all the other components. So before we get into a lot, I know we're talking about nutrition, but just to be very clear, nutrition is just one component to the other.
I couldn't agree more.
Things
it is, but would you both agree that, Chippy, you say it all the time, and Jordan, you say it too. It is the fundamental, because everything we do in our life, whether we're going to a funeral or celebrating a birthday or the birth of a child on a birthday, we're eating. Everything centralizes around food. Even a hurricane, right? The hurricane, what are we doing? We have to go out and buy all this food, so we're going to be stuck in our houses for 7 days. So even at a hurricane, which is like this disastrous time in a household, we are sitting there, and come on, guys, we're all guilty of it. Everyone's like, when's the hurricane coming so we can start ripping open the hurricane snacks?
Yeah.
Right? And doing all that. So for someone who just wants to just do one simple thing, focusing on food is a really good start, I would have to say.
No, I think absolutely. It adds a huge component to that metabolic disease that we talked about. But and then I think, Jordan, you know this, right? Because you read the articles. When you read scientific journals, like, you have to be a scientific sleuth to go through these journals, figure out who funded the study, right?
Yes.
And so those people that have, oh, well, there's a paper to back up my claim. No, the devil's in the detail. Who funded the study? So there are dairy and meat industry funded studies that will show that eating cheese is healthy, that eating primarily meat is healthy. And I'm not here to debunk it. I can just say from my experience, right? So from my experience and the experience of my patients, if you, A, get rid of processed food, B, you add fiber and color into your diet, it makes a fundamental difference. And a world of a difference, right? I mean, Jordan, right. And I think the key is to not make it so, like, so strict. People aren't allowed to be human. And I was guilty of that. I remember telling people literally that they will get heart disease if they don't follow this diet. And this is like, and
we probably weren't wrong.
Well, exactly. But then I got labeled a food Nazi, and then I'm like, oh, maybe I need to change my tune, right? So, yeah,
it's the delivery.
Isn't it a great thing that we can grow? We can still grow. I
well, and I know,
relate to that.
I gotta say, well, all of us, we're very lucky because all of us visit each other's homes and we socialize. And one of the things that I love the most is, now I'm going to say this, it's not literal, is how afraid Jordan's other half is of Jordan. And he does not.
Really?
Meaning, like, not, that's what I mean. I'm not being literal, but, he also lives a whole food, plant-based lifestyle. And that's not where he comes from in his childhood, right? Like, his family, I mean, his mom used to come here and cook for us, and, they cook a lot of meat-based stuff and a lot of heavy stuff, which is totally fine. But even when the kids have something on the stove and Marvin's coming through the house, we always offer, and he's no. Like, he really prides himself on that. And I think that that's really important because, let's face it, ladies, a lot of us have a hard time getting, like, the man want to be like the steak and potato people. And, I shouldn't be so sexist to say it's just men, but I hear, in the salon, we have a lot of open conversations, and I service mostly women who are talking about how difficult it is for their man to sort of follow suit, and all the woman is trying to do is just try to keep her man healthy. Yeah. And so I love that Marvin does follow suit. I know my husband is, he
He's
prefers.
A keeper, Jordan. He's a keeper.
He is. He also knows how to load and unload a dishwasher like no other man I know.
Oh, he does. He's very good at dishes. He is.
He is very good.
If I cook, he does the dishes, and it works out well.
I think,
but I do, for the record, it was his choice to go plant-based. So actually,
I believe that.
Our
I don't
date,
think you forced him.
Yeah, it was so cute though. It was the next day after our very first date, where he forgot I was vegan. He forgot I didn't eat animal products twice on our first date, and it was fine. That was back in like 2015. Like, not a lot of people were into the vegan thing back then, and I ate before we went to dinner. I was prepped to just have a good time.
Just socialize.
Just socialize. But the topic came up, of course, and I explained where I was coming from. And the next day, he messages me, I came home and saw this vegan bodybuilder on YouTube, and I'm not going to eat meat anymore. He just went 0 to 100.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that. Because Arnold Schwarzenegger, what was the one, that documentary?
Oh,
about,
Game Changer?
Game Changer.
Was that the one?
And I love that Arnold Schwarzenegger was such a big part of that because, for men, for so many years, Arnold Schwarzenegger, as far as, those big guys go,
the epitome,
he's a huge icon, and, watching someone like him say, I've never felt better. I've never been leaner. I've never been stronger. Right. And I love that documentary. And we're not here to preach about whether you eat meat or not, but there were some really cool studies that were done in that documentary. And the one I loved was when they took the 3 young boys that were all athletes, and they were like, I think they were either high school age or college age, But the most
college.
important thing to a man, right, was that their erections. And the guys that were like loading up on animal protein weren't able to get the same amount of erections as the plant-based guys.
Yeah.
And it was like,
Circulation.
yeah. And that's very important. And so I thought that was a pretty cool study. And you can't deny it. I mean, they fed them all the same things. They studied them over time. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, I think, metabolically, that eating a high carnivorous diet, promotes cancer. And again, this is, none of this is like hardcore randomized control based studies, but we know enough of biochemical mechanisms too that, some of it causes insulin resistance. There is trimethylamine that can cause plaque initiation and progression, and cancer initiation and progression and metastases. There's this one study I remember that men with prostate cancer that drank whole milk had a 40% increased risk of dying from prostate cancer.
Wow.
So, right. So,
listen, and I don't know who knows this, and I don't know who wants to hear this because it's disgusting. But in this country, there's more pus in our dairy products than any one body should be ingesting. And we're the only species that drinks other people's milk. I mean, I don't understand it, right? We drink sheep's milks and goat milks and cow's milk, and I don't know where the milk in an almond comes from, but we're drinking almonds and cashews and hazelnuts and all this stuff. But my point is that why are we doing that? And is it beneficial or is it hurting us? And I suppose for everybody, it's very different. We're a dairy-free household here. We don't have any dairy in the house, but it is very controversial. I mean, they're very controversial things. And one of the things I love talking about difficult conversations because nobody really wants to address them.
Oh, it's my favorite thing. Right? I always joke that so my undergraduate degree was in religious studies, and I always people say like, and people say, oh, I don't talk about religion or politics, and I would love nutrition.
I do.
Right up in there. I love it. These are my favorite conversations.
I do.
Yeah, religion,
I love it.
politics, nutrition.
Well, I think because it's so personal. It's what we talked about. Everything is tied into food. And what I have found, and I learned this the hard way, is that when I started telling people to shift their diet, suddenly they felt very insulted because they felt like I was insulting their spouses, their grandmothers, their mothers, their culture, right? Because it's so personal, because food is so tied into culture. And
oh my God, you should hear my mother.
Oh my gosh.
When I won't eat her food anymore, it's like
it's an affront.
Slap in the face.
Yeah, you slapped her across the face. Yeah. Because you're Italian, right? I mean, gosh, the food is like the center.
Oh my gosh. I mean, if you don't sit around a dinner table for 6 hours, you have not even shown up for dinner.
I
but I can't eat
a little more of that in the U.S. though. A little more of that, like food as a bonding experience.
We sit around the table at night at my house.
Oh, that's so nice.
We always eat around the table.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very nice.
Is there one thing, Jordan, that you find that's like something that's repeated that either people struggle with, or, when you get them to ask them to sort of shift their diets, is there like always a pushback on one or two things? I have found dairy to be a huge, huge thing. Obviously sugar, right? Because sugar is so addictive.
Who's not addicted to sugar?
Right.
I mean, how do you escape it?
Yeah.
Even if you want to eat an apple, if your insulin will spike per se.
Well, right, but we could talk about that. We could talk about
we could have a whole episode about that.
Episode on how an apple spikes your blood sugar. So if your cells are full of fat, and now you eat an apple, it will spike your sugar. But if you take the fat out of the cell, you eat an apple, your sugar will not spike. So that's it's a different discussion.
Well, it is and it's not. I mean, I think it's critical. I think that's critical information. And it sort of debunks the when we talked about the ketosis and the people who are saying like, I can't live on a whole food, plant-based diet because I'm insulin resistant, but it's because of all these things. And I hear it primarily from clients who have had a heart attack. They've had a heart attack. So all of a sudden now they're keto. I'm like, I don't understand what you're doing.
I never forget. I had a story. Dr. Chippy, you've probably experienced this more than I have just working in the hospital in cardiology. But when I was doing my internship, I was in the ICU, interning, not as a patient, I should say. And I was talking with one of the patients who had just had open heart surgery. And my supervisor was talking to him about his nutrition, things he eats. She mentioned oats. And he went on about how, I never eat oats because they're high glycemic and it's going to spike up my blood sugar. And she goes, well, they're also great for preventing heart attacks, reducing risk, I should say.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That drives me crazy. I have to tell you, people that won't eat fruits, people that won't eat grains, whole grains, not processed grains. I want to clarify that.
Yeah.
Whole grain, so steel cut oatmeal and, bulgur wheat and kamut, and quinoa's not a grain, but quinoa. And, because, I can't because it spikes my sugar. And here's the crazy thing. They wear the continuous glucose monitors, right? So then they're eating an apple. They see their sugar spike. They're like, yep, that's it. I can't eat an apple. And people are completely not understanding the basic biochemistry. You get rid of the fat that is stored in cells. You can then eat a high complex carb diet and never spike your sugar.
Yeah. No, it is. I'll tell you, it is. If you could really educate the masses on this, because I feel like now more than ever with such a divided society as to who's eating. I have a client, she went a complete other direction, and another client of mine is her friend, and they go out to eat, and one is totally plant-based and the other one decided she was all plant-based, but now she literally, they went to eat the other day and she said to me, she said, you can't believe what she ordered. She ordered 2 steaks. That was her meal. And I was like, what?
So this is a thing that happens, by the way. It goes back to, I think it goes back to a couple principles that I see all the time, which is shiny new thing, right? The next shiny fad diet, the next quick fix, but also all or nothing thinking, black and white, which so many people experience. I talk to about people with this concept all the time, just thinking, here's the thing. If you think all or nothing, I'm going to go completely one end of the spectrum, raw fruitarian, or completely carnivore. You're setting yourself up for failure. There is no one perfect diet, right? It's going to be the way of eating that you can sustain.
Right, exactly.
Over time, that leads to, good lab work, good health, helps you live the life you want to live. So kind of back to your earlier question, Dr. Chippy, the approach I take with people is not so much, telling them what to change, more just making little nudges and suggestions based on where they seem agreeable. But there is one thing where I get a lot of pushback, and that's alcohol. That is the biggest thing that I get pushback.
Well, they could get a death sentence, and if you tell them to stop drinking, they're like,
oh my God. Asunta, do you remember our conversation with a certain individual at a certain party? And I mean, he has resources galore. He has the top doctors that could be on his team. And
uses them all.
Uses them all. Has a dietitian that texts him like long texts. He's got a continuous glucose monitor. And he told me, he's like, all you doctors, none of you guys have figured out how, I do all of this. You guys know all of this knowledge. You guys have yet to figure out why I can't have my tequila. Well, it's not just.
It wasn't just tequila. I mean, it was all the alcohol.
It was like, what, 28 drinks a day or something like
what? He had on that particular day when he was gloating about getting healthy.
Yeah. Like, well,
at that particular day, he had over 20 drinks.
Sugar is high.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And, it's a double standard, or what is it? Maybe cognitive dissonance. I don't know what the term is to describe that.
That's it.
Yeah, where it's like, and another thing that I feel very passionately about is, even though I am an ethical vegan, I do not believe that food should ever have a moral value, right? It's not my place, even as a dietitian, to judge what someone else is eating. That's their choice. If they pay me and ask me for my feedback,
sure,
then I've got a green light.
Right. I agree with that, Jordan.
Yeah.
But this concept of like criticizing people for drinking, I don't know, going to a drive-through, but you're having 4 cocktails a night. It's kind of a double standard. And I do think it's cognitive dissonance.
I always say one of the biggest double standards I see is how people treat their vehicles better than their bodies.
Mm-hmm.
We know a lot of
their pets better than
their pets.
Yeah.
The pets are getting the best food possible, and their cars are getting the highest premium gas possible, but they're eating food from the gas station.
Yeah.
And they're fine with that. They're fine. They grab a drink and a chips and they go on about their day, and they're totally fine with that.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to me, because those are the same people that say, well, organic food's really expensive. I'm like, dude, you're driving a Bugatti.
Yeah. I mean, that's, yeah.
What are we doing?
Right? It's hard for people to change their habits.
Yeah.
And, you're right, Jordan. Alcohol is, I get a huge, and part of it is our problem. Do you guys remember like the studies back when, and I would say this actually, there was
the red wine,
all these studies about, like moderate alcohol is protective, right?
Yeah.
I said that, I don't know, 15 years ago. Well, do you drink? No, we don't. I don't drink. Well, maybe you should have a glass of wine a day. I remember telling my patients to have a glass of wine because, moderate alcohol is good.
I have a question, though. Okay, so we've all traveled the world. We've all come from different places, experienced different cultures. I do want to say, and again, it's not to criticize or place judgment, but there are other places outside of this country where people are drinking more alcohol than we recommend the average person to drink. They are eating foods that we recommend the average person cuts back on. And I do believe that part of that is, I think we have a bigger struggle here because of what's going on. And you mentioned it earlier, Chippy, there's over 80,000 plus chemicals that we are ingesting or exposed to in a day. And for people that haven't gotten out there and explored other countries and other parts of the world, one would just assume, well, this is just how it is in the world.
Well, but
that's not completely true.
Right. But these are the same countries that give mothers maternity leaves for years if they so choose. No. These are countries that don't have 80, 60, 80, 90-hour work weeks. These are countries where dinner is 6-7 hours. These are countries
2-hour lunch break.
2-hour lunch break. These are
siesta
times, right? So back to what we talked about, nutrition is a huge component of inflammation and metabolic dysregulation and metabolic syndrome. But you pair that with all the stuff that happens here, not just chemical exposure, but the lack of sleep. Can we talk about that for a second?
Oh, so important.
Sleep, right? The
sleep is so important.
Stress, lack of sleep, and chemicals. You add that to the mix, forget it. I mean, and we're in the perfect storm, right? There is such a surge of chronic disease, right? Back to that number, 93% of Americans are not healthy.
I just read an article that said in the next 5 years, 100% of children will develop an autoimmune disease.
Oh, autoimmune, right? This is all we could talk about, right? Autoimmune, diabetes, heart disease, dementia, migraine headaches, macular degeneration, strokes, heart attacks, heart failure, arrhythmias, acne, right? It's all
and we were talking yesterday, and we talked about how, and you're not there yet, Jordan, but Chippy and I are, and we've said it before, we're Gen X, and we're going to accept it differently than the generation before us did and the generation before them did. We're in this stage of our life where, the kids are grown, there's time, and we're sort of ready to push the boulder back up the mountain because the cycle has to break. Because just because my great-grandmother, my grandmother, and my mother had it, it doesn't mean that I'm going to sit around and wait for it to happen to me. So we have to change the cycles. And we have the technology now. Well, we do, right? We have the technology now, and we have the knowledge. I mean, what did we have, Chippy? We had encyclopedias.
Oh my God.
Now we have at our fingertip. You go, the library. Oh my God, the Dewey Decimal System.
Oh my God! Like, you knew you were come from an affluent family when they had the whole Encyclopedia Britannica
from A to
library.
Z.
Then you're like, oh wow, these are really well off, right? I had to schlep to the library. I had to ask my mom to drive me to the library to go look.
And God forbid you wanted to find something that started with the letter, B. You had to wait for that one to come because they were still printing. Yeah. And it's kind of like what you said about medical school. By the time you got that encyclopedia, that information was obsolete.
Obsolete, yeah.
By the time we printed it, by the time
50% of what you learn, is wrong. You just don't know which 50,
Yeah, it's profound. And so Jordan, you see these patients, and you see these people coming asking you for help. It's a 6-week program, which I think is so great. $100 a week to get such personal care, custom care for themselves. And then what happens after all that? I mean, do you get to sit with them the way that we get to sit with you and sort of keep help? Like, can you stay on? I mean, do they get to come back and ask more questions? I mean, how does that work? Do they fall off? I mean, what's the success rate?
Yeah. So that's something we tell people. You're an alumni after this point, and you can always reach out to us. I don't beg people, okay? But I really strongly encourage people. Keep me in the loop. I want to hear what's going on because I think sometimes people get nervous to reach out. But we've actually had something that surprised us. We weren't expecting this over the past couple of years. We've had a lot of people that choose to come back because of the accountability. Maybe they feel like they need consistent accountability. Maybe they feel, hey, I really nailed my nutrition, but now I'm ready to focus more on exercise piece or the mindfulness piece or the sleep piece, right? And that is the hugest compliment ever. And yeah, I agree with you. I think the price is a steal. I mean,
it is.
Market value for seeing a dietitian is somewhere between $150 and $250 a session. So to think you can get 6 weeks of daily access and multiple meetings a week, it's very special.
So if I was a patient in your 6-week program and I was going to leave you, what are the top 3 tips that you would leave me with? Send me on my way and say, okay, fly, bird, fly.
Yeah, that's such a good question. Okay, so I think the first tip is more practical. I would say just for anyone, not even someone I've worked with, but from working with all these people, one thing I think everyone can benefit from a nutrition perspective is packing a bag of healthy snacks and bringing it with you. Get a lunchbox, throw in a water bottle, throw in 3 or 4 different kinds of snacks, maybe like a piece of fruit, right? That doesn't need to be refrigerated, clementine, apple, pear, something like that, and bring it with you because we are not robots. And especially with women, especially people with big jobs, right, that like to care for other people, it's so easy to put ourselves on the back burner. So I think that's a really practical tip. The second tip I would say is consistency is not what people think it is. I think people have this idea that being consistent is I do the same routine every single day and I never mess up. But consistency, in my experience, both personally and working with people, is you have a goal. Maybe it's to exercise 3 times a week, 3 or 5 times a week, right? And you go on vacation and you get off track. And then you realize, oh, I haven't been to exercise for a little bit. I'm going to get back to my goal. right? Picking back up where you left off from a place of kindness and compassion, right? So many people are so quick to beat themselves up and say, oh, here I go again, not being consistent, right? Like nothing ever sticks. But that is being consistent. It's just getting back to it. Sooner the better, but that takes practice, right? Yeah. And then I guess the last tip would be, I'm a big believer in mind-body connection. So I would encourage everyone to take a mindful pause at some point during their meal, especially lunch, I think is a big one where people just kind of scarf something down quickly, multitask, whether it's at the beginning of the meal or at some point in the middle, right? And just check in. How am I feeling physically? How is this food tasting? What am I thinking? Am I present? Am I thinking about what I'm doing? Right? And move forward with the meal.
So many people are grabbing food from a drive-thru and literally eating it in their car.
Yeah.
You know, probably while taking a phone call.
Exactly. Exactly. And we need to be in a place, right? That parasympathetic nervous system, that rest and digest. It helps our body digest and absorb all the nutrition. So I think it's just such an important point.
I love that.
Awesome.
Is there anything that you want to share, Jordan, to share with people that we haven't talked about, or, you know, any?
Yeah. I think I've said a lot today. We've covered a lot of topics, and I think we could have an episode about every little topic we've brushed on.
I agree. And I hope we do. I hope we do.
Maybe not be so judgmental against ourselves, right? That we're
we're so judgmental.
Yeah. And so
I say this all the time. I am one of the most social people. I know I love to talk. I love to banter. I love to learn and engage. But over the years, I've become more reserved because even if I accept the invitation for the social event, I usually am bombarded when I get there because I'm eating at home first. I'm usually not having a drink. And it's very interesting what happens when you do that, when you show up to a restaurant or to a party and decline the alcohol or the food that's all spread out. And you're just there to talk and have fun. It's almost like it's not acceptable. It's like, is everything okay? You know, it's very interesting. It's very, very interesting. And so I've just sort of taken a step back because it's just, you know, I really, it's a lot. You know, people do judge. And people like, you know, use alcohol is a big thing, and people don't like to drink alone. I've noticed that. It's very interesting. I'll go meet someone for a happy hour because I want to engage in their company and talk to them. And they are not interested unless I have alcohol as well. And I'm not a non-drinker. I just don't drink on a regular basis. I drink when I feel like it, and it's very rare.
You're picky about when you drink because it means
I'm picky
something.
about what I drink too. You know, I'm not just going to mix up a sugary drink and throw an umbrella and a straw in it either. Like,
I think some of the alcoholic stuff is helping, right? Because I have, you know, there's some patients of mine that they just can't drink, right? So I think the surge of non-alcoholic drinks are.
Oh yeah,
I think that's really
the mocktails are.
Mocktails.
And they're more expensive than the alcohol.
Well, frankly, you know, I think that's, you know, it's good, right? I mean, some of them are they're really cool looking, and you're there.
Yeah, they are.
You're at a
really creative.
You're holding something. They don't know, right? So
they don't know.
You don't know. There's options, right, for people.
You know what I do is, and I learned this from a girlfriend of mine years ago. She was so funny. She was short on cash, and she was a bartender. And so in order to stay amongst her social life, she would go out with her friends after work. That's what everybody did in the industry. Mm-hmm. And she would order herself a club soda in a rocks glass with a splash of cranberry and a lime.
Yep. Yeah.
And everyone just assumed she was having a vodka soda.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, and they never bothered her about it. And she just kept throwing them back. And she was always sober, and, you know, and it's funny. It's funny, but it's true. So, yeah. So thank you girls so much for talking to me today.
Thank you. Yeah. I could talk all day with both of you. This
Well,
was really
we hope
fun.
you will. Will you come back and talk with us again, Jordan?
Oh, absolutely. Anytime.
All right, girls. Well, thank you so much for your time, all your knowledge. As always, I personally am taking a ton with me today. I hope everybody that's listening to us today takes a ton from them. And until next time with Dr. Chippy and Jordan, we wish everybody the best, happiest, most beautiful day.
I feel so clear. Oh, ask Asunta for a magic spell to make us feel and live so well. In her wisdom